We'll put awareness.
Mr. Chairman, I rise to take a call on the Passports Amendments Bill number 2. Mr. Chairman, if I could just call upon your ability to give us a bit of latitude, and given that we are speaking to all parts, that this debate might be quite wide-ranging, and we might be traversing through several parts of the bill, and hope that will be appropriate in this regard. Mr. Chairman, I want to speak specifically about some clauses in Part 1. If I could start with Section 5, which is one of the amendments to the Principal Act that deals with the life of the passport. Of course, we are moving the expiry of our passports from 5 to 10 years, and a little bit of the history behind that, Mr. Speaker, is that the passport life, the termination, the expiry date was moved to 5 years in the first place due to public pressure around perceived security threats, particularly after what happened at 9/11. And those threats, while still evident, I think in terms of our ability to deal with, have much better technology and knowledge, that a lot of those perceived threats are now no longer appropriate and no longer apparent. So the need to have the faster turnaround of passports is now diminished. So we are now in a situation where it is appropriate to have 10-year passports. I know that the inconvenience of having to renew passports sooner. 10 years does pose some problems at the other end, Mr. Chairman, when we're talking about advances in technology, and we know how quickly technology moves, and we know that the introduction of the electronic passport, the smart passport, for example, has happened, the take-up has been relatively quick. So it has some significant advantages, and one of them that one of my previous speakers raised was around the cost, not having to renew quite so quickly. But we have also been considering the actual cost of the document itself, and the level of subsidy that is required, or might be required, to keep it within a level that is appropriate for many people to access. And this is it's an important document to have. It's certainly a foundation document for anyone to use as identification, not only overseas but also in New Zealand. So we would be really encouraging the accessibility of passports for all New Zealanders. Mr. Chairman, the clauses 10, 11, 12 deal with the cancellation of the passports, and deal with the matter of how that might be recorded, whether that's electronically, whether the passport is required to be returned in a physical form, or whether the passport can be cancelled without actually seeing the physical document. This is a vastly improved situation that, and it will add to, I guess, security issues that, that one knows that the passport has been cancelled, it's noted electronically, and this requires a high level of trust, Mr. Chairman, in our databases, but it is possible to do so. So that just provides some added security that the passports have been cancelled correctly. Mr. Chairman, I also just want to talk about Section 11A, the warnings on the travel document database, where the Minister can actually record on the database when there is an indication that a warning is required, and that may be when a travel document is to be recalled under the previous sections that I mentioned earlier, or whether it's to be cancelled due to court order. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Whether this is with regards to a court order that could cancel the document. Mr. Chairman, I also just want to make mention of the fact that in section 24 we talk about the refugee travel documents which can be cancelled by the Minister if the refugee is making the appropriate declaration, and I also want to make a point about UNHCR and the requests that are made to the UNHCR around appropriate identification documents. I know the difficulty of some citizens, particularly from places like Somalia, who have issues with gaining appropriate identification documents. This bill doesn't deal necessarily with that, but in principle it is an opportunity for us to discuss the importance of identification documents and the difficulty we have. Mr. Chairman, I don't want to take too much more of your time. Thank you very much.
I call Clayton Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had to race back down here.